Hi and welcome back to Ask Juliana. Today we're going to be talking about FOIAs, what that means, where to request them, what kind of information you might get back after you request them. And today we're really going to be talking about the FOIAs that are particular to immigration practice and kind of the information that you would possibly want to look for and the agencies that you would request them to. So the FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act, and it entitles any person to access information from the federal government. Really, it just kind of depends on the information that you're looking for. They might give it to you, they might not. Some things they will rule out as classified and they won't give it to you, but they usually explain, if they're not going to give you a certain information, why they're not going to give it to you. So in the immigration context, FOIAs can be an invaluable tool for both the client and the practitioner, just kind of depending where they are in the process. Sometimes clients just want to know what immigration has on them, that way they can be prepared in the future. Other times they're already in proceedings or they're going to file a petition of some sort, or they've just gotten detained, so we need some information and maybe they don't necessarily remember all of that information, such as dates, locations, things like that. So that would be when you would want to request a FOIA. When it comes to immigration, however, because there's so many different agencies that are involved and so many different factions in each of those agencies, people kind of get confused as to, well, I already have a FOIA. Me as a practitioner, when somebody tells me that, I usually am like, okay, which one? Because there's about 6 that possibly you could have asked for. And then they just kind of look at me like, well, the immigration one. For immigration, mainly the types of FOIAs that you're going to request come from the Department of Homeland Security. And that's because they include Customs and Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and the Office of Biometric Identity Management, or OBIM, which used to be called U.S. Visits. That's the bulk of them. You could also request them from the Department of Justice, the Department of State, and the FBI. So usually when someone says I already have one, that's exactly why I asked that question. Well, which one? So we'll go through all of them very quickly. That way you know what information you're looking for and kind of where to start. So we'll start with USCIS. USCIS, you would request information for a previous A file. If anybody has submitted a petition for your client, maybe in the past or in the 90s, you're trying to look to see if they have any of those. Certification of the non-existence of records. So let's say you've tried every other FOIA and there isn't one, you would ask USCIS to issue you a letter essentially saying this form doesn't exist. You would request this FOIA through a letter by mail, fax, or email, along with a form, the G639, which is signed by the client, and you'd mail it off. FOIAs right now are taking a little bit longer, just like almost everything in immigration at this point. So be patient because they do take time. However, they do send you a receipt, just acknowledging that they've received your FOIA request, and then from there it kind of outlines typically this is what our timeline is. After you receive the receipt, you can go online to just kind of see which category they've classified you as, so you can see the general processing times after that. The next FOIA is Customs and Border Patrol. For that FOIA, you're probably looking for apprehensions and detentions at the border, expedited removal orders, I-94 records, voluntary return records, entries and exits into the country, and this is submitted online. So everything is done online. You'll get the results online. They'll send you an email essentially saying here are the results, or the results are available. Please go onto the website and download them. Again, those are taking time. So with all of these FOIAs, you are going to get a letter that they received your FOIA request. And then from there, you'll be able to kind of track its progress as best as you can, just depending on the agency. The next one is ICE. So with ICE, you are looking for interactions with ICE arrest records, detention center records, bond requests, and that is also submitted through email. The next one is OBIM, and this is done with your fingerprints. So This is done, let's say an individual came through the border and they gave a different name. Obviously their fingerprints are going to be the same, so if they don't necessarily remember, I know it was 10 years ago, but I don't remember the month, and I don't really remember what happened, but I do know that they fingerprinted me. So you'll send the fingerprint card, so this is done by mail, and they'll come back with every time that that person has ever been fingerprinted for immigration purposes. And sometimes, for example, when we pull OBIM FOIAs, it'll come up with, oh, they were fingerprinted at USCIS because they've applied for something. So all of those interactions with any type of immigration official will be there, with the exception of maybe immigration court, and then you will send the fingerprint card for that FOIA. The next one is for the Department of Justice, actually, the Executive Office of Immigration Review, and this is actually the immigration court. So if your client tells you at some point, I'm pretty sure I went to court and I saw an immigration judge, but I'm not entirely sure what happened, I just know that I got a piece of paper and then I was told to leave. Then you're going to want to see, okay, well, was it an order of removal? Did the judge grant a voluntary departure? Or what exactly happened after that? So you'll pull all the court records. You can ask for audio of the court hearing if you want to be entirely sure of what was said at that court hearing that day. Charging documents and immigration judge decisions is what you're going to be asking for. The requests for EOIR FOIA should be made through email or mail. And all of the emails, if they're submitted online, or the emails, if you go to the agency website and just type in FOIA request in the search bar, they generally tell you the address to send it, the email address, a phone number if you have any more questions, and usually frequently asked questions section so you can make sure that you send your FOIA to the right place. The other one is through the Department of State. The information that you'll be asking usually for the Department of State is consular processing and other consular records, evidence that a visa was issued, visa applications, and passport applications. These requests are made through mail and fax. The last one is the FBI FOIA, and that's looking for if the individual has a criminal record. And a lot of the times when we pull FBI FOIAs, it's because the story is something like, I remember about 15 years ago, I was stopped by a police officer and they did take me to jail and I went to court and I paid everything that I needed to pay, but I don't remember exactly where it was, what court system it was, and I don't remember when I exactly got arrested. So for the FBI FOIA, this is done by mail. They have their own application that you fill out, and you also send the fingerprint clearance card because that's how it's going to come back. And sometimes with FOIAs, with the FBI FOIA, they're also going to have apprehensions by ICE anytime that they were arrested by ICE. So the FBI FOIA is usually the one that comes back a little bit quicker, and it could be a good starting point if you're not exactly sure which one to request information for. So this is a very brief overview of FOIAs. If you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments, and I'll see you next week.